Who are the 4 teams Iowa has never beat? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to Big Ten Tuesday, where I take on a topic in the Big Ten every single week. If that's something you're interested in, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Now, this week, we're diving into the 4 teams Iowa has never beat in program history, dating all the way back to the 1930s, is this first team. Now, you see, I've got my finest Iowa Hawkeyes hat on. It's actually a new hat I just purchased from Amazon. If you're looking to get one for yourself, you can check it out, linked in the description below. Now, as we dive into this first topic, this first team that Iowa has never beat, this is actually a team, and you'll see the kind of a pattern here, except for the number 1 team that I'll get to, is that, and I'm going by order, is that a lot of these teams were disbanded, unfortunately, so they will forever be known as the teams that Iowa could not beat, unless they somehow come back. And the first team is Kansas State. Now, Kansas State, Iowa has lost to last in the 1930s, the 1938-1939 season. Now, Kansas State was actually a very solid program until it was cut in the 1970s. Back in the 30s, they actually had won a few conference championships, which was pretty impressive. Now, the first time that these two teams met, Iowa actually lost by a score of 32.5 to 1.5. So yes, the scoring was a little bit different back then, back in the 1930s. And this also wasn't the best season for the Hawkeyes. They were 1-6-1. Their only win coming against Northwestern. The next year, as you saw in that infographic, they actually tied to Kansas State 14-14. And yes, there were ties back then. Now, moving on to the next team that Iowa has never beat, and this is a team that's unfortunately not existent today, but it does exist as a D1 club team. So not an official D1 team, but as a club team. And this is Toledo. Now, this team today is actually a pretty solid program as far as a club team with national finalists and All-Americans. But back in the day, back in the 1960s, which is where we're making that jump, they actually beat the Iowa Hawkeyes. They beat them by a score of 17-9 in the duel in 1966. Now, this was a year that the season that the Iowa Hawkeyes also lost to Michigan in a blowout, 32-0, which would be crazy to see today. They lost to Minnesota, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Wisconsin, as well as Toledo. So their only 2 wins were against Illinois and Northwestern. Seems to be kind of a pattern here with Northwestern, but kind of interesting to see the teams that Iowa just couldn't necessarily beat back then. The next team is an interesting one for sure. The next one is New York Athletic Club. So not an official like D1 team, but an athletic club, which is a private club in New York, one of the top athletic clubs in the country, with many sports. In wrestling, they're focused mainly on freestyle and Greco. You may know some notable members recently, or within the past few years. They had Bruce Baumgartner, Adeline Gray, Sarah Hildebrandt. Of course, his last couple are more recent. Adam Kuhn, all of the New York Athletic Club. Now, this obviously wasn't back in the day that these guys were on the team, but just kind of interesting. And their last loss was 20-9 to the New York Athletic Club, and making the all-time record 0-1-0, which is also the all-time record against Toledo, which is 0-1-0. And that's just saying, like, these teams have only wrestled a couple of times, which I find very, very interesting. And this last team is actually a team that still exists today. I don't know if these 2 teams will ever wrestle again, but it's a team that still exists today, and that is Ohio. No, not Ohio State, Ohio. University of Ohio, which is an all-time record Iowa has against them, is 0-0-1. So they could not beat them. The last time they wrestled, it was a tie in 1971, which Iowa had a decent record then. It was actually 12-4-1, finally becoming a better program, losing to Michigan State, Southern Illinois, Michigan, and Northern Iowa, as well as Ohio. So, I mean, this is just tying Ohio. So interesting to see what exactly happens with the Iowa Hawkeyes in their all-time program history, the 4 teams that they have never beat. Now, if you're interested in checking out another Big Ten Tuesday topic, make sure you check out this video right here. I believe you'll really enjoy watching this one.